It's been a year since the collapse of a dam in the small town of Jagersfontein. Some residents are still waiting for the houses they were promised. Farmers in the area are also still struggling to pick up the pieces after their livestock and hectares of land were washed away. David Mahlobo is the Deputy Minister of Water and Sanitation, and he joins us now for a discussion. A very good morning to you, Deputy Minister. Thank you for your time. It's been 12 months since the disastrous tailings dam collapsed in the small town of Jagersfontein. That's a pretty long time. We still haven't seen accountability. Why is that?
Thank you very much. We need to indicate that the processes have taken a little bit longer than expected. In our case, we've been working under the leadership of the Deputy President, His Excellency Deputy President Mashatile, where all the number of departments that are affected were drawn to go to that particular area. And there were certain action plans that were decided working with the province and the municipality of Kopanong. In our case, we need to remember that we did open a case, and it has taken long that for the decisions to be made. But we can then conclude now that we've concluded all our assessments. We've done all the collection of the evidence, working with our experts. And now we're going to be presenting to the National Directorate of Public Prosecution so that warning statements can be taken on that particular front, because there has to be accountability, especially for the lives that were lost. But from the other issues around the risk that are there, on the issues of water, I want to confirm that, one, that area still remains vulnerable. That entity was able to submit a plan. It took them time to get an approved professional person, because if you are dealing with dams or tailing dams, you need expertise. It took them long to produce that particular plan. They produced one, and now that area where the tailing dams fell, the structure still is not safe, but we allow them so that there are no problems further to discharge the effluent into a historical pit so that they don't have problems. The other matter, remember, there was the washing of the wastewater treatment plant. It has been refurbished, and we can confirm now that that plant is working well, and we are also taking water samples. But the rehabilitation of the entire area, including the streams dam, has not been completed. They are at 50%, and we are continuously taking issues of water samples. The community was also having challenges of water. The Department of Water and Sanitation, we have given that municipality about 18.8 million rands to increase their water availability in terms of the treatment plant from 2 megaliters into a 4 megaliter plant. And we are working with the Val Central, the former Bloom Water, in supporting them with the issues of water provision. But because these tailing dams are a problem, we have spoken to all the mines in our country and directed them that all the tailing dams must be registered as dams, and they must comply with the imperatives of the National Water Act, because they hold that responsibility for registration and the management of the risk. Thank you.
So improving regulation, of course, is quite imperative here. It needs to play a huge part in holding those responsible accountable in those efforts, and the call that you made in April to try and ensure that mining houses across the country register those tailing dams that meet the requirements to be classified as dams. What has the response been?
The response has been very positive. It has been very positive, but there are challenges with the tailing dams that I can tell. A number of these aspects in terms of dam safety regulation, because we are part of the International Organization on the Management of Dams. Some of them, for reputational issues and exposure and their risk, they are very reluctant, because these dams, for them to be registered, including the management plan, an approved professional person, which is an APP, must be able to sign off. Remember the last time when we were dealing with Jagersfontein, one engineering firm did a very shoddy work where they confirmed that there were no structural problems, and then ultimately there were problems. But we've increased our regulatory capacity as the department so that we can be able to bring them to the board. But we are working very closely with the Department of Mineral Resources and Energy, because some of these tailings, and people are still mining those mineral deposits that are there in as much as it is residual. But to be treated as not as a mining activity is one of the gaps, and that judgment by the court that was made. And government is our view as a department that it must be challenged so that it can be subjected to all these issues around mining regulations, while on our part, we are able to direct the issues around water and water uses regulations.
Deputy Minister, as a department, what are you doing to identify the possible non-compliant tailing storage facilities?
Remember what we have done. After that particular incident, we worked with the Department of the MRE. We issued through our Director General that all these tailings, especially in the Northern Cape, certain parts of Free State, where normally the diamond mining was, and certain parts of the Northwest, we have asked them to do the registration, and they've started to do that. But we have also increased our oversight in terms of our officers who are monitoring these tailing facilities, including illegal dams, because there are certain people in South Africa who are actually doing a water abstraction without the permit of our department. So that those are the ones that we send them directives, and where possible we proceed with the issues of prosecution. But we're also trying to work with the entire justice system on how these cases that are so sensitive and so technical, so that when we take them to court, they are becoming more successful in terms of prosecution. But even in instances where penalties are being made, there are stiffer penalties, because some of these people, they are actually having a lot of finances. And when you put a punitive cost, sometimes it's just like peanuts to them.
You made mention that you've opened a case as a department. How far is this case, and how are you building it up? On what grounds? Well,
the case it took time because we had to bring experts. We're even currently working with West University, working with the University of Pretoria, with all those experts to be able to say what caused the failure from a scientific point of view. But in terms of the case that we've opened, we've collected all the data. There is a structural integrity report because our engineers, even before the incident happened, we had been able to demonstrate the non-compliance issues from a structural engineering point of view. But we have also been in a position when the incident happened, when our engineers did an aerial overview of that particular area, where you could see that the first compartment had collapsed, the second compartment had the issues. Even right now, as we speak, we also took the water samples. Remember, it went in terms of the sludge, it went until to those dams that were there down there, including the sewer. And all those samples are there in terms of strengthening our case. We are at a stage now that our evidence is being given to the prosecutors, so they can be in a position to be able to engage, take the warning statement, and be able to do the issues of prosecution. While at the very same time, we continue with our monitoring activities, because that area, I must still confirm, it remains vulnerable and it remains a high-risk area because of the topography where it is, and it is within the flood line.
Where has that now left the residents of Jagersfontein, who have described this disaster as man-made? And, I mean, they're still waiting for houses, and farmers in the area are also still struggling to pick up the pieces.
The other issues I will not be able to venture into them because there are competent departments around the other issues. I need to be able to indicate that our response has been very slow in some of the issues that we're supposed to deal with. But at the very same time, it's not an easy matter to handle them. because of the socio-economic condition. There was a time before our attitude was to close that thing, take away the license so that it can't operate. But it would have been irresponsible to do that because already in terms of contamination and the volumes of the sludge that is there, it would have, if we had closed the operation, they would not have done the issues of rehabilitation. And on the basis of that, we're able to do that. But some of these communities, including the leadership there, were appealing that this thing is the only source of an income. And it must not be closed, but it must be managed in a very responsible way. And government must ensure that we heighten our regulatory and oversight and accountability mechanism. And working with that leadership on the ground, that's what we're trying to do.
The issue of water, Deputy Minister, is a very sensitive one in South Africa, of course, given the many factors that have resulted in people being sick and things like that. Money has been injected into increasing water availability. I mean, you said that right at the start of our interview. How are you monitoring this process to ensure that the money does indeed go to bettering the lives of the members of community members of Jagersfontein?
Well, that Kopanong municipality is one of those municipalities which is an aggregation of a small, very poor towns or dorpies. They have no capacity to have their own revenue. As I speak right now, they are owing our water board millions and millions of rands that they don't even have a capacity to pay. At a particular point, the water board to be able to reduce the water that is being given to that municipality, but the Deputy President and the Minister agreed that we can't deny people access to water because they can't pay. The government is trying to respond to ensure that there is an economic growth at that particular point so that those citizens, they are able to pay for services, while at the same time, those that are poor, not working in terms of our security net, they are able to get free basic services like water and electricity. But when it comes to the money that we have given, the the implementation is done by our water board, and it is a clear mechanism on how are we monitoring the support that we are giving that municipality. But we can assure that as part of the bigger Harib system, and because they are part of the Harib district, there is no way that we will not be able to support them around water provisioning, but more importantly, and deal with the issues of wastewater management, including the issues of the sewer and spillages in those small villages.
And before we let you go, I mean, you yourself have admitted that this process has taken way longer than it should have. I mean, 12 months is a significant amount of time when it comes to people's lives and well-being. How much more time is needed now? You speak about the University of Pretoria and Witwatersrand investigating this matter because there are still many questions when it comes to the causes of the failure of the tailings storage facility in that area. How much time and how are you going to manage a stricter time frame?
In terms of that technical and professional work that is being done, what caused the failure in a scientific way, our agreement with those institutions in terms of our dam safety team, by the end of March next year, they will have completed that task. But in terms of the issues of prosecution, we have collected everything and we will urge and work with the justice system and ensure that a determination is being made whether to prosecute or not to prosecute. Remember also at the very same time, the citizens have a right for civil claims of some of the issues that have happened. But in terms of water quality monitoring and that rehabilitation, we have given the directive to that mining activity that by the end of this year, the entire rehabilitation of that floodplain, including the river systems, they must be able to complete by the end of the year because they are currently at 50%. In the meantime, we are not very happy with them around the issues of the decanting. In other words, the removal of the accumulation of that effluent dam. Because when it can start to rain in Pong, we might have problems of the flooding because of the terrain in that particular area. And we'll be continuously providing feedback to communities, but working with the province, environment, ourselves and the municipality, our teams on monthly basis, they are monitoring that particular situation so that we can avoid any recurrence. But we will then proceed in other areas where incidents never happened, ensure that those dams are registered and the owners are taking all the necessary precaution that their dams, they don't fail. But if there's any failure, they have the capacity to respond.
Very well. Thank you so much for your time. David Mahlobo, Deputy Minister of Water and Sanitation, there giving us an update on the Jagersfontein matter.